welcome to the very first episode of Off the Fence, brought to you in association with Bet365. This is your weekly rundown of all things jump racing. And I am lucky enough to be joined each week by essentially two legends of the game, two men that have long-standing relationships with At The Races. The first of which is Tony Keenan. Tony, when we announced that you would be on this show, the fans went wild for you.
Oh, I'm sure it was Barry that were going wild for one legend anyway, and one lad that likes spoofing a bit about racing. I'd say is probably more accurate. So let's get that right straight from the start. We'll be called up by the advertising standards now if that goes out.
Right, we'll set it straight. And as you say, the other man that gets to join us every Monday is the newly retired Barry Geraghty. How are you getting on, Barry?
I'm very good, Vanessa. Enjoying the easy life.
Yeah, you look like it, you do. Now look, every week we're going to be looking back and we're going to be looking forward, and we're going to make this a short, snappy and informative show for you guys. So without further ado, we will jump straight in to looking back at the week just been. And of course it was the Betfair Chase up at Haydock, and Bristol De Mai won it again, relishing the track, relishing the conditions, and in he goes. Daryl Jacobs absolutely delighted. In behind him, of course, Clan de Zobo heading for another King George, and then Lost in Translation, who disappoints again. Barry Geraghty, how did you read the race? What did you make of the winner?
Well, ground was atrocious, which Bristol De Mai loves. So real test of stamina. I thought the main strength for him, or one of the main strengths for him, was Bell's Hill acted like a pacemaker. So it was an end-to-end gallop. You could see from early that Lost in Translation was struggling in conditions. I thought he got into it a little bit leaving the back straight, but he'd no more to offer. On the other hand, Clan de Zobo travelled really well, and he's a horse I would have had my doubts about before. The King George last year didn't ride like an amazing race, but I think the way he travelled in this race really makes him a big player for the King George this year. So I thought he was the horse to take out of it for the King George and even possibly the Gold Cup, but Bristol De Mai, maybe a Grand National as a test of stamina, being what he wants.
Yeah, he's a 25-1 shot currently, I think, for the Grand National. Tony, I mentioned there, Lost in Translation, disappointing again. It's been a year since we saw him at his very best. What did you make of his run and the race as a whole, I suppose?
Yeah, I like that. What Barry said, I thought he was never really going, even heading out in the second circuit. It looked hard work. Bobby Power was asking him at fences. He's become a horse now with a little bit to prove for me anyway. Because his two good runs since he's gone out of Novice Company have come, his two best runs, outside the Novice Company have come in slowly run races. This race last year and last season's Gold Cup. And the kind of more traditionally run races, the stronger run races, this one at the weekend and the King George, he is disappointed. Now he's beaten very early in those races. You know, you would think there's a problem. Obviously there was a wind issue after Christmas, but you'd like to see some sort of excuse from, like Barry, very encouraged by Clan de Zobo's run. Red Paul Nichols said that he had him in a month earlier than last year with a view to come for this race. Maybe he should try and have him in 2 months early next year if he wants to go at it. But I think Clan de Zobo's the kind of horse that no matter what, he is going to come on for the first run. Now you could argue, of course, that he had quite a hard race there at the weekend, matching up against a horse ideally suited by circumstances, but he would look in the box seat for the King George at the moment. I'd have him ahead of the stablemate Cheltenham for Champion.
Yeah, fair enough. Barry, as for the winner and a Grand National as a target, is that something you think will suit him?
I think so, but you know, the handicapper, what he does with him and what Bristol De Mai does in the meantime, you know, it's an ideal trip for him. He jumps really well. The track is usually well watered too nowadays, so that will suit, but it just depends how much weight he has to carry. Or he's going to be top weight, but how much weight he has to give to the opposition.
Yeah, for me, I don't know, I think Haydock is his time, and Lost in Translation, I just think definitely, like Tony says, something to prove, and we can stick with the sort of open 3-mile chase division and head back over to Ireland, where on Thursday at Thurles we saw a listed race, but it was almost a mini Gold Cup with Presenting Percy winning over 2 miles 6. Tony, that race was a bit of a midweek treat for us. What did you make of the winner?
Well, first of all, Jerry Hannon calling it a mini Gold Cup admires optimism anyway. It might have been a Gold Cup in 2018, but I'm not so sure about this. Although his use of oscillating coming to the third last was quite impressive. I thought you couldn't draw any conclusions from it, to be quite honest. I suppose it was a lesson to me. I didn't have a bet in the race, and I was kind of annoyed myself I didn't back Presenting Percy. I think in betting and analysis sometimes finding the balance between keeping it simple and looking at things in a complex way when they need to be looked in a complex way. This was just a really simple race. You had the horse that had the run, had got a fairly chunky trainer upgrade, and was probably at a level with the other two, was sent off the outsider of 3. I was annoyed I didn't back him, to be honest. But as to view what was the form word, I don't really know. Presenting Percy, slowly run race really. They were sprinting from 3 out. Overall time would have been slower than the beginner's chase won by Eurobot earlier on the card, but I think they were 5 seconds quicker than them from 3 out. So not really emphasis on stamina type thing. Manella, we know where he stands with him. This wasn't his target at all. He tends to get well beaten on his seasonal return. Like the last couple of years, Snow Falcon beat him 6 or 7 lengths, and then last season, Duvan beat him 17 lengths. Like the King George is his aim. I'm sure Henry de Brum is happy enough for his run. And Kemboy, I don't really know where it's all gone wrong with Kemboy. Like, he's become this keen going, shoddy jumper, a bit of high head carriage horse that just you can't trust him to do anything at the minute. Now, if you want to look at the positives with Kemboy, you'd say Willie Mullins never has his horses staying chasers ready at this time of the year. He's thinking the spring. But the market spoke quite strongly in favour of him. I think he's become really disappointing. He's a shadow of a horse that beat Alboom Photo in a Punchestown Gold Cup, Ruby's last ride. Brilliant race, real deep race with form in behind. And just disappointed throughout last year. The only shred I suppose I hope to hold on with him is I'd like to see them go forward on him. It's quite surprising to haven't gone forward on him in recent times. And I just wanted, before I think Barry might be a bit more positive Presenting Percy. I was just looking at Thurles there. Like Barry, I know you jump jockeys, you're scared of absolutely nothing, but as a punter, coming down to that second last at at Thurles, I've my heart in my mouth. So many of my dreams have died at the second last there. It just looks the most treacherous fence in racing, one of them anyway, and the last isn't much better. Is there any fences there looking back on your career you'll be going, Jesus, not this one again. This lad catches me out every time at certain tracks. Because to me, the second last at Thurles just looks a nightmare for a jockey to try and get a horse organised when they're coming down the hill.
Yeah, no, it's a tricky one. It's just its positioning. You're on a level. You're a slight downhill run as you go to it, but there's a big downhill run at the back of it, and horses, the ground gets away, it falls away from you. So horses at speed, you're racing, you overcommit, and they just get on their head at the back of it. It's a bit of a speed fall, but there's lots of tricky fences. The second last in Leopardstown is a real tricky one. The old second last on the old course in Cheltenham was always very tricky, but the new second last is tricky enough as well. The cross fence in Newbury, another one. They're just fences that horses are a little bit indecisive when they're going for it. They're just not sure, and if you're asking a question, you feel like you're asking a big question. So there's lots of tricky ones and lots that could catch you out, but the second last in Thurles has caught me out a few times over the years, alright.
Barry, what's your view on Presenting Percy? For me, he's a favourite of mine. That novice win at Cheltenham, it doesn't get much better than that for me in terms of Davy cantering round like he did, just hunted him round out the back, and then now he's back to something near his best. What did you make of the performance?
Yeah, he was very good as a novice, but he never built on that, and he never showed the progression you were hoping for. But visually, that was really impressive. I take on a lot of the points that Tony makes, and Manella would have needed a run, and Kemboy has been a bit hit and miss, but the track would really have played to their strengths, and the trip, which wouldn't have played to any strength for Presenting Percy, who would love a test of stamina. You have a quick downhill run, you're at 2.6. I think that the other horses had plenty in their favour, and there was, as Tony said, there was money for Kemboy, so someone thought he had a chance. But I thought visually it was the first time Presenting Percy for me has lived up to any bit of hype that he had shown as a novice, because there's a big gap back from what he'd shown then to what we'd seen in the meantime.
Do you think he's a legitimate Gold Cup horse at this stage now?
I'd have more faith in him now, and I'd look forward to seeing him at Christmas. He'll obviously be a big player in Leopardstown, and I'd imagine that's his target. But there's for me, having seen that, there's more to rate him on than what he'd done since he was a novice.
Yeah, I'm taking it as a big positive, and talking about Leopardstown at Christmas, that looks like it might be the intended target of Minella Indo, who we also saw in the last 7 days win another cat and mouse race, cantering round, having a nice time, but beating not much in particular. What do you make of that, Tony? I know the old cliche, he can only beat what's in front of him, and he's doing it nicely, but it's a little uninspiring just at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, to be honest, I think I think HRA have come up. It was a good idea. They've put in a number of these second season races. I believe they're only a once-off for horses that basically had their novice season cut short in March, where they get an extra run against their own kind of age group. But I think so many of them have been disappointing. The Beacon Edge one in Galway wasn't too bad. This one here has been disappointing. There've been one or two other. The Fury Road one in Punchestown was really a joke. I think that was worth 60,000 to the winner. Like that was just a poor race. But I think it has served the purpose with Minella Indo. He has already had a very different campaign to the 2 years previous, where Henry de Bromhead, brought him along slowly, a novice hurdler, brought him along slowly as a novice chaser, and you could certainly argue inexperience, and the man on the other side of me beat him in Cheltenham. He's going to be very experienced this year. He's going to be going to Leopardstown with 2 runs under his belt, 2 easy victories. I think Wexford probably achieved more in Wexford than he did at the weekend. And that Leopardstown Christmas race, it's going to be very winnable for him, really. He'll have Presenting Percy, and that's fair enough. Presenting Percy's coming into it in form. He'll have the few horses from Den Ryle. You'll be expecting Del to work to improve, Storyteller. But all the Willie Mullins staying chasers, to me, Alboom Photo won't be there. And in general, Willie Mullins staying chasers, as they need the run at Christmas with a view to coming back for the Irish Gold Cup and on to Cheltenham. So Minella Indo, fitness edge, he would be very much the one to beat at Christmas for me. Albeit, I see already he is single figure price for the Gold Cup off the back of that good profile.
Yeah, when you look at the anti-post market right now, of the horses we've just spoken about, you've got Lost in Translation at 16s. I think we can all agree something to prove now. Presenting Percy at 16s needs to build on where he's at. And Minella Indo at half that price, at 8-1. Of any of those horses, Tony, does any of those prices tickle your fancy at all?
No, not really. Not really. I think the favourite could arguably be a little bit shorter with the lovely preparation he's going to have for Alboom Photo. Yeah,
and Barry, same question to you. Does any of those anti-post prices of the horses we've seen just recently in any way excite you?
Not yet, really. Minella Indo, he only proved he's alive. He did everything well, but you couldn't draw any conclusion from that. He'd benefit from it at Christmas, but we'll know more then. And I believe there's a good chance we could see Champion Leopardstown at Christmas as well.
Nice, well that really would be exciting, a bit of a rematch there. Barry, let's move on to some novices, because this is an area, novice chasers for me, I love it, I'm all for the promise. And Shishkin today made his chase debut. Now, I don't know, does it get any swifter than that over a fence than what we saw him do today at Kempton?
Not a lot, no. He was really good. He attacked his fences. He was very clever. He showed great pace. He showed bottle. He did everything. It was like watching Altior or Sprinter Sacre go around there over the years. So you could take nothing but positives from it, and it was the perfect start. And everyone will be fairly happy with that one.
And tell me, Barry, I know we'd heard a lot of positive chat about him schooling, and it was always the intention that he would go chasing, as far as I'm aware. But when you see him do what he did today at Kempton, and we use the word kind of like electric, when he's coming down to a chase fence, is he kind of like accelerating in your hand? Is he running into it with great enthusiasm?
He looks a nice ride. Sprinter Sacre, for example, would have ripped down. He'd be taking them on. Altior would seem more relaxed. So I'd put Shishkin more in that type of bracket. He seemed more relaxed. If Nico wanted him, he just give him a squeeze. He went forward. If he wanted to go for a short stride, he fiddled, shortened the stride, measured, and got over it. It was lovely to watch. But he looked fairly uncomplicated and fairly, he was very manageable.
Now he's, I think, 7-4 for the Arkle, which I think we can all agree 5 months out is pretty short. But he is much in a way the best we've seen so far. But one of the other Henderson chasers we saw on Friday at Ascot was, of course, Chantry House. Very different sort of chasing debut, and a horse who I think it's fair to say room for improvement. Once stepped up in trip, Barry, a horse you know well. Yeah, no,
he will improve a good bit for the run, I believe. But the natural pace, if you saw the natural pace that Shishkin showed, he was always so comfortable, whereas Chantry House, when the Paul Nicholls horse, who had a run under his belt over fences, he went off a good gallop, and just Chantry House took him a little while to warm to it. just to get the feel, get his measure of his fences. So it was over the last 5 where he really came alive, and he was brilliant over those, and he put the race to bed well in the debt, having probably hit a couple of little flat spots. So I'd imagine he'll stay at probably 2.5 for now, but he has the option to go to 3, but I couldn't imagine he'll come back to 2. I'd say Shishkin is covering that base for the Seven Barrows team.
Yeah, definitely it looks that way. They've got, as always, really just a lovely bunch of novices. We'll stay with Ascot and we'll move on to Imperial Aura. For Kim Bailey and David Bass won the Grade 2 at the weekend and now looks like a very genuine Ryanair contender. What did you make of that ride and the way he jumped? That must have been a pleasure, wasn't it, for David?
Definitely, no, brilliant ride, jumped really well, and he's a horse who's improving, and he even improved through the race. You could see him getting sharper. That was his, competitive race. His runner in Carlisle was a doddle in comparison. Where this was competitive, he had to work, he was kept up to his game. David gave him a lovely ride, but jumped brilliantly, and like that he showed great pace and appetite. He was taking on his fences, and he's a big player for the Ryanair. Big
player, there you go, have it. Tony, for you, let's rattle through another sort of back to the Irish. Ferny Hollow and Appreciate It came back with relatively good sort of seasonal starting points. What did you make of those two?
Yeah, both fine. Ferny Hollow had obviously a racehorse to beat in Bob Ollinger, although he did prove a bit more straightforward riding he had done in his bumpers. He had to be dropped out the last couple of times to get the best out of him. But he does seem to be a bit more straightforward now to put the hood on him, and he did it quite well, got there soon enough with Paul Town, and unlike the sort of exaggerated hold up that they needed for him last year. One little thing though I've been thinking over the last couple of weeks, I would recognise obviously the Ferny Hollow Appreciated are a decent horse. I would question a little bit the depth of last season's champion bumper. Julie Stowaway, Third Time Lucky, Esky Lane, Tony Martin horse Good Time Johnny there at Naas at the weekend, all getting beaten recently. I just would wonder if it was the greatest champion bumper, and I think we're only going to get to find that out now. A lot of them will go off short odds in maiden hurdles. I get the sense that there would have been maybe better bumpers at Punchestown, Fairyhouse, Aintree last season, if those meetings had have gone ahead. I know Galway there were some strong bumpers. We may come to this horse later on. She wears it well. And yeah, Ballyadam didn't get to kick on after Downpatrick. Just would have a little bit of a question about that champion bumper form. Wouldn't get too carried away with it.
Would you agree with that, Barry?
It's an interesting comment, but I thought Ferny Hollow was very impressive. Appreciated looks to me like a fellow who probably won the Ballymore trip, but I thought Ferny Hollow, and especially beating Bob Ollinger, that to me looked really strong.
Ferny Hollow actually 8-1 for the Supreme Novices, which Willie Mullins, I don't know, is that value? I don't think so at this stage. Other horses to note, quick lines on Notebook, who we saw at Naas. Didn't think Fakir Dudery jumped as well as he could. Would it be fair to say, Tony?
I thought Fakir jumped a bit better than Notebook. I thought Notebook over the first few was fairly slow. Very interesting race. To me, going into the race, you would have said Notebook was the 2-miler and Fakir Dudery's was going to be the one up to 2.5. But if the race unfolded from 4 out, it was Rachel Blackmore that was getting into Notebook, and Fakir seemed to be going best. I'd say he had hit a reasonable price in running Notebook, but then when he turns into the straight, Notebook just pulls away. I'm going to be blunt here. I just think Notebook's a way better horse than Fakir Dudery's. Fakir Dudery's had this huge allowance edge last year, and he wasn't the typical 4-year-old because he had loads of experience in France, even chasing. I was really disappointed with him now on Saturday. And even gone up and trip, I wouldn't even love that because he didn't really look like he needed it the last day. Now, it was a little bit strongly run. Jingle did set a good clip, and Notebook racing where he did suit. But no, Fakir disappointed me. And I'd be a big fan of Notebook, to be honest. Not for Cheltenham, because he's had 2 flops at Cheltenham. That's the reality with him at the minute. But Leopardstown at Christmas, Leopardstown, Dublin Racing Festival, I would say he'll set a good standard. Chacan Bourgeois, obviously, a horse to beat there. And just to mention, another horse in the same colours that has a bit of a disappointing record at Cheltenham, but has come back in great form, is Battle Over Diane. There are horses that just don't act around Cheltenham. They might be too in the Jigginstown colours, and I'd set now they're set fair for the next couple of months. I'd be disappointed if they don't win a Grade 1 or 2.
Yeah, okay, noted. Thanks, Tony. Barry, comments on Fakir. For me, I don't know, when I say he didn't jump as well, I just thought I don't know, in places like last season he looked electric at times, and I don't know, I just didn't think he jumped maybe potentially as well as he can.
He was a very good, as a novice he jumped really well, but as the companies against get more experienced, as a second season horse, that doesn't stand out so well, and he becomes the one under pressure. I thought Notebook was a great performance, and it was, to me, it screamed Ryanair. I thought Cheltenham, probably the occasion got to him on both occasions, as it did with, say, Aspar Towers. So for me, Notebook, he looked more relaxed. He settled into his natural pace, which looked like Arce wants 2.5 at least. So I don't think he's any business over 2. I couldn't see him get near Shishkin before Christmas. But Factor de Ree, I don't think he's going to show the improvement from a novice as much as Notebook would, because he hasn't the improvement in his jumping. There's no department he could improve him, because he was as good as he could be as a novice, I felt.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. So I want to give a special mention to Bridget Andrews' ride on Robin Gold at Ascot. Barry, have you ever been that cool on a horse, ever?
Never, no.
No,
she gave it a brilliant ride. She dropped it in, put him asleep. But to jump the last, to be a length down going to the last, it was really good, brilliant, great confidence. But they went very quick, and they raced in Swinley Bottom and got going probably earlier than ideal. But she knew that, she was aware of it, and she made all the right decisions. It was a beautiful ride to watch, and fair just for her, it was really good.
Yeah, Jamie Spencer and Shishkin, all but the sort of like wave, I thought. I loved that. But anyway, let's move on to our tracker horses. Tony, who was your tracker horse from the last 7 days, please?
Yeah, just want to say a little bit about the tracker. People use trackers, I suppose, for different things. That maybe horses they're interested in watching, horses they want to follow, whatever. I suppose my angle with this is I kind of want to find a horse that I think is going to be overpriced the next day, something that might be missed. I'm trying to bake that in a little bit with the horses I'm mentioning here. Now, I would very much say this is an inexact science, and sometimes the horses that you think aren't obvious are found in the market the next day, and sometimes the horses you think are really obvious are big prices the next day. So you do have to bear that in mind and think about the prices that are in front of you. But the horse I liked was Jessica Harrington's horse, Mr. Hendricks, in the Beginner's Chase, the last at Naas on Saturday. Thought it looked quite a deep race. He was completely unfancied. I think he was 50 to 1. He was the second string of the yard, but he was the only one that went and made it a race with Janet Hill. Jumped pretty well in the main. He wasn't great 4 out, but stayed at it well. But the key thing was he got caught down the inside at Naas, which basically is never the place to be on the chase track to me. I hate to see a jockey on a horse that I've bet coming to the far side. Sorry, I should say the far side. The near side is always the place to be at Naas, up against the stand rail. He's been second jumping the last, and he's just faded back into 6th, and to me he would have shaped like the second best horse, and you'd be thinking there would be a Beginner's chasing him somewhere along the line. He's won a point. He's done a lot of racing over 2.5, 3 miles. He didn't look slow here. I wouldn't be surprised. 2 miles might be just a little bit sharp, but 18 furlongs, easy 2.5 might be just the job for him.
Okay, into the tracker he goes. Barry, who's your tracker horse, please?
I thought Imperial Alcazar ran a big race in Haydock. He first run for 10 months. He ran a bit keen through the middle part of the race and probably done too much for Paddy Brennan. Got tired and finished 9th. Only beaten about 14 lengths, but it was a good run. He had some nice form last season, and I'd say with that run under his belt as a 6-year-old who's progressive, I think there's more races for him.
Okay, mine was No Getaway for the Skeltons. We saw him at Market Raisin in the week. He is a horse who finished second to a horse who'd had plenty of runs throughout the summer, and so race fit. He's making his chasing debut, and I just think he relished chasing. I think he'll probably be missed next time, and I think he's got a big handicap in him somewhere along the way. Sort of Skeltons have brought him along beautifully patiently, and I just think he's a horse who's going to improve now for chasing. So No Getaway for me. But let's start now by looking ahead to what we have to look forward to in the coming week. Let's start with the Fighting Fifth Hurdle up at Newcastle, live on Sky Sports Racing. Don't miss it. And Epatante looks to make her seasonal reappearance, obviously the champion hurdler from last season, and no better person to comment on her than you, Barry. I guess, actually, I'm just going to start with a blanket question. Is she a proper champion hurdler, or was last year the best of an average enough bunch?
It was a good performance in the Champion Hurdle. It probably wasn't the strongest race, but she showed great improvement from Christmas to Cheltenham, and the ground was as soft as she would want it, but she's shown great improvement since then. I've seen her during the summer, and physically she's developed again. So I think if she needed to improve to face the opposition she's going to face this year, I think she has improved. I think she's going to be a much better mare this year than last year. So for me, she's head and shoulders. She's the one to beat. And on Saturday, it's a good race, but Scu Royale and Silver Streak, I think, are the two she has to beat, but they'd need to bring their best game and a bit with it. So she's going to be very hard to beat. And the reasonably good ground in Newcastle is only going to suit her especially. So no, she'd be hard to beat. And I think she's a worthy favourite for the minute until we see more of the opposition, really.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to be rude about her when I say is she the best of an average bunch, but you kind of got to ask the question, is there any area, obviously you said that she's improved physically, jumping wise and a bit more speed, is there what area would she need to improve on sort of in terms of her actual race?
No, just physically, just pure raw strength. At Christmas, as I said, she struggled a little bit on the soft ground on the far side in Kempton, and when the ground got as soft as it did get on Champion Hurdler in Cheltenham, I thought she'd struggle, but I couldn't believe when I saw her on the parade ring and I could see the size she'd filled out, and the improvement Nikki had got out of her from Christmas to Cheltenham was unbelievable, and never for a second did I think that she would do anything but win in the Champion Hurdle.
Wow, nice feeling. Okay, no Goshen again, just disappointing. I'm nervous about him going forward. I think probably maybe move on to the Ladbrokes handicap down at Newbury, where of course it's a famous race, but I'm not so sure about it this year. It's a sort of wishy-washy. I think Copperhead for me from the Tizard Yard, big talking horse last year going into Cheltenham and then fell in the RSA, but I think he's probably got a big sort of staying handicap chasing him at some point. Anything for you to mention there, Barry?
Yeah, I like Black Op. He had a great run in Carlisle behind Imperial Aura, and obviously that form has worked out well. He was second at Champ around Newbury. He's going to love the step up and trip. He's 4 runs over fences. He's not that well exposed, so for me, big stay and chaser. I think he's the right one, but it's a very open race, but not the classiest renewal.
Okay, I think I'd agree with that. Tony, let's move on to Fairyhouse, because that is where we're going to see the real class this weekend. And Envoi Allen running the Drimore. What are you looking forward to there?
Brilliant weekend's racing there. The 3 grade 1s, some top end handicaps, good juvenile hurdle, usually a good bumper as well. Yeah, I think Envoi Allen is going to scare a lot of them off in the Drinmore. I don't really see what's going to run. Willie Mullins' only one entry, Mount Leinster. He hasn't run over fences, so he's not going to take part. Maybe Andy Dufresne's going to pitch up, Humby de Lee. It does look like he's going to scare them up. And this is going to be an issue now throughout the season. You can already see trainers talking about avoiding Envoi Allen. Trainers are obviously going to want to avoid Shishkin. I don't know where they're going to go with Cheltenham. They're going to have to take them on at some point. It's just, I've seen it mentioned with a number of trainers. Gavin Cromwell, who had a really good weekend in Naas there, winning with some relatively cheaply bought horses. He was saying that Darver Star, no, I'd like to avoid Envoi Allen. So yeah, that's going to be a thing going forward. The Hatton's Grace itself, Honeysuckle seems like she's going to be back. Henry de Bromhead not concerned about not having a run, says she's fairly easy to get fit. 2 interesting horses for me, and that are the 2 second season horses. Mouse Morris's horse French Dynamite and Beacon Edge and Owen Meads. Interesting to see how they get on. But the race of meeting for me would probably, in terms of competitiveness, will be this Royal Bond. Ballyadam is going to pitch up, but it's which of the Willie Mullins mares is going to take him on. She wears it well, very, very impressive in Tipperary. Looked a deep race, time comparison with Sant Ra has been well documented at this stage, was way ahead of it. But I'm just wondering, is there any chance he's going to run the Dawn Run winner Concertista? This is her last hurrah as a novice, because she only broke a maiden in March. It'll take a hell of a gelding now to give her the mare's allowance, even without the run. So impressive was she in that race.
You've teed that up nicely. Barry, for you, I know you've been riding out at Gordon Elliott's a little bit, I think, and you've sat on Envoi Allen, who is, of course, like the horse we're all following this season and is the big white hope. Tell me what he's actually like at home, what he feels like. Is he going to live up to the hype?
Oh, I think so. If you sat on Envoi Allen and didn't know what he was, you'd be asking everyone, what's this fella? He's a bit like Sprinter Sacre. He's a little bit special. I'd say he's an amazing rider on the track, on the racecourse. Over a fence, he looked brilliant in Downryle. sure, he's a shoe-in for this race. They're afraid to take him on, and there's nothing good enough to take him on anyway. And he's so straightforward. He can go in front, he can go in behind. He's the most uncomplicated looking ride you could get. So I nearly managed to fall off while I was in Gardens too.
God, that would have been terribly embarrassing, Barry. Terribly embarrassing. In terms of what he actually feels like, as in when you're on top of him, I know you only rode him at home, but like, is he kind of... He's a big individual and he's gorgeous to look at, but is he actually very kind of sensitive when you ask him to go or give him an inch of rein?
That's it. He's electric. You just move a muscle and boom, he's gone. He's very responsive, really sharp for a big horse. He's not a slow horse, so he could be coming back if you wanted for an Arkle easy enough. He won the Royal Bond last year. He's got lots of natural pace and he's very assured at his jumping. So I'm sure he'll stay at this trip 2.5, and he'll be aiming towards being a Gold Cup horse next year. But he's definitely no slouch.
So is he the horse you're most looking forward to seeing at Fairyhouse over the weekend then, or special mentions for anything else?
Oh no, he would be the one. Honeysuckle, she's a really good mare, and it's her race to win. You'd imagine it'll be interesting to see what is there to take her on. But she'll be hard to beat. Fury Road, maybe I thought might be maybe her biggest danger, but no, Envoi Allen for me definitely, and Ballyadam, he's a very smart horse, and it'll be interesting to see what Willie has to take him on.
Okay, well, something for us all to look forward to. It's actually a top class weekend of action on the track, both sides of the Irish Sea. But we can now have a little bit of question time. Each week we want you to send in questions for all of us essentially, but this week we've got a few sent in already after our launch a couple of days ago. And we can start by asking you, Barry, what are the vibes about Flynn to Sacra this year? How far do you think he can go? And how close to returning to the track is he? I think he's got an entry at Newbury on Friday. That's from Chris on Twitter. Can you answer that for us, please?
Yeah, well, he'd schooled really well last year. His schooling has been really good again this year. And no, everyone's very happy. I spoke with Nicky this evening, and he said he's in good shape and he hopes to go to Newbury on Friday.
There you go, straight up.
And I would also like to think he would go to the top. I thought his performance in Kempton in the bumper was top drawer.
Oh, okay, very positive. Question for both of you, I guess, but we'll start with you, Tony, from Mark Jordan on Twitter. Will Sire de Burley win the Stayers? Straight up question. Last year's form beating the Storyteller looks very good now. 10-1 looks too big. Will Sire de Burley's win the Stayers, Tony?
Every chance, yeah. I know the comparison between the Pertemps and the Stayers Hurdle last year would have reflected very well on the handicappers, and he was the one carrying the big weight. But most positive of all was his reappearance. I didn't think he'd be able to cope with 2.5 at all, looking at him last season. He seems to have improved. That was really impressive, and he was a big drifter in the market, suggesting he was going to need the run. So extra perfect start to the season really, and all onwards to Leopardstown, I'm sure, for the 3 mile grade 1. Yeah, why not? He wouldn't have looked a horse that would have had a load of improvement in him, but begod Gordon Elliott has eked a little bit more out of him, I would say.
Yeah, it looks that way. Barry, no better person than you to answer that question. Sire de Burley's for the Stayers, big price at 10-1. What does he feel like a Stayers hurdle horse to you?
Well, he's that type, and to win the Pertemps off top weight was a big performance. So that's his obvious step now, is to step into Grade 1 company. It's obviously it's a strong enough division with Paisley Park, and I think Time Hill is a very good horse, and I think he's going to do well in that division. But Sire de Burley definitely has a big chance. He like that he races behind the bridle. He showed a lot of improvement from last year's Pertemps to this year's Pertemps, but he races behind the bridle. He doesn't do anything fancy, but it was a great performance in Navan. And if he wins, he won't be winning it by any more than a length anyway. But he's there with a big shout. But I think it's going to be a stronger division this year.
Yeah, it looks that way. It looks to have plenty of strength in depth. I think that's probably about it. We've rattled through everything. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? Boys, anything more to add from either of you? Anything you'd like to pass on?
No, I'm looking forward to Time Hill in Newbury against Paisley Park, because he's a horse who I really liked last year as a novice, and he got in a bit of traffic in the straight in the Albert Bartlett, so I'm looking forward to him.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating. Paisley Park making his reappearance. Wish them luck. Tony, anything else from you, please?
No, just really looking forward to the Fairyhouse at the weekend. It really marks the start of it getting going with the grade 1s, and here we go type of thing.
Yeah, lots to look forward to. And you guys, thank you very much for watching. It's been our first episode of Off the Fence, thoroughly enjoyed by me anyway. I hope you've enjoyed it too. Please like, comment, subscribe, send your questions in, send some feedback in. We want to hear it all from you guys, and mainly we want the viewers to be heavily involved in the show. We're going to be building up to Cheltenham and possibly beyond, and so there's a good few weeks ahead of us, but get involved. Like I say, give us a like, give us a retweet, give us a comment and a subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. This was Off the Fence.